Welcome to the Business with Beers podcast. This is the place where we help entrepreneurs expand their business, build their wealth, and generate passive income. I'm your host, Brian Beers, an entrepreneur who's on a mission to inspire growth from everyone around me. Remember that you need to take the actions others won't, and you can live the life that others don't. Please be sure to check out my weekly newsletter that now drops every Thursday. It includes one quote, one tweet, one podcast recommendation, plus some business and investing insight from me. It's short and it's sweet. My goal is to provide you with just a couple gold nuggets to help inspire your growth. Go to brianbeers.com to subscribe. Hello, everyone. I'm excited today to bring you Ben Little. Ben operates the #1 Zaxby's franchise in the country. His company has 14 locations, over 800 employees, which is like mind-boggling to me, and 50 million in revenue. He's also has a number of sweat house franchises kind of in the pipeline that he is going to develop. So welcome to the show, Ben.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here and excited to hopefully talk about some fun and interesting things today that the audience can hopefully learn from and take away.
Yeah, great. So to get started, how did you get into the fried chicken business?
Well, my path is pretty meandering. The super duper Reader's Digest version is that Tony Townley is one of the co-founders of Zaxby's. He became a family friend through an even more ridiculous and longer story, and tried to get my family in on store number 6 and said no. Then they got to like store 330 and we were like, okay, I think we'll do it now. And so that was the shortest version of that story I could tell. We opened the first one in 2004 in Clayton, North Carolina. And that one struggled for quite a while. We can get into that if you want, and some of the fallacies that go along with franchising and, expectations going in, and a lot of the things that we learned on number 1 that we try to never repeat again. But we got the second one open, was a good location and cash flowed pretty quickly. And then the third one was pretty similar.
What years were those by the time you got all your bruises healed that you decided to open the next two?
The second one was 2005, so it was the tail end of that next year, and then the one after that was 2006. But that first one, I mean, it was tough sledding, and it really didn't make any money for probably the first 4 years or so.
Oh wow! How did you not get discouraged and just say like screw this business? I don't remember what it cost to build, but I'm sure it was significant. In the millions. Yes. Right.
Yeah. I mean, we bought the real estate, owned the real estate. The buildings were much cheaper back then, but it was still a bunch of money. And I think I really don't know what would have happened if our second location had not turned out much better than that first one.
How did you decide to open the second one then? If this first one's such a dumpster fire? Like, why did you not say
that was the license agreement?
Okay, so
that was the development agreement. Yeah.
I'm sure you're in the guy's ear, Tony's ear, being like, "What the hell, man? Why isn't this working?"
Yeah. Well, it's a good lesson in that, it's different franchise to franchise, obviously, but specifically with food, if it is a regional brand or isn't even big enough to be called a regional brand yet. Like the further you get from the mothership, the harder it's going to be coming out of the gate, and you're probably going to have some relatively low performance for a while until you start. Like brand recognition is like one of those things that a lot of people that are wanting to get into franchising really don't even take into consideration hardly at all. But I mean, it's a really, really big deal, and it takes a long time to build that brand reputation and recognition, and there is no shortcuts to do that.
It's time. I mean, it's probably time obviously quality executing, but then it's like probably number of locations, right? Like, so you have,
Yep.
if you own multiple locations in different parts of the city and triangulate it and people see you different, like then it starts to imprint on their brain, right? But you have that one location in one part of town, like it's gonna be really probably hard to build it versus having, a triangulating it. Is that the theory? Or is that kind of like what you were going off of?
Yeah. Yeah. And heaven forbid you put your first one in a not great location that's hard to find and inconvenient to get in and out of. And,
Yep.
just little things like that, can just crush you from the start before you even, get off the ground. But yes, there's a lot of lessons learned on
Yep.
number one.
How important is the location in it? Like, is it location is what makes or breaks you over your ability to operate and execute the model in your business?
I think it is the most important thing.
Yep.
I mean, you can. I think I tweeted about this on Twitter the other day, but there's still a Quiznos here in Raleigh, and it's just because it's in a good location.
Yep.
And that's why it still exists. And there's a lot of other brands that have not grown net new units and have shrunk, the last 5-6 years, but the ones that are still hanging out and doing around are doing well just because they're in great locations. And as smart as I like to think I am sometimes, and as good as an operator as I like to think I am sometimes, if I'm being super duper objective, I know that there's a very substantial percentage of our success that has to be accredited to one, my two partners' real estate expertise and knowing what makes a good location and what makes a bad location, and two, we picked the right city. I mean, we would have got lucky in either one, because when we were looking at this in the early 2000s, it was either going to be Nashville, Tennessee, or Raleigh, North Carolina, and both of those would have worked out just fine.
Yep.
But there is no doubt that
is the technology and the systems that the franchisor provides, and maybe your insight, like, does that make it the higher odds these days that you pick a location and it's going to be a good location versus back then maybe it was just kind of like pin maps or whatever crap they were looking at?
Yeah. I don't even remember what we used.
Yeah, it was just like, oh, this is available. This is a plot of land we can buy. Like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, and like usually they would send the real estate up guy, and he would have to, I'm using air quotes here. He would have to drive it. That's what he would always say. I just need to get up there and drive it, and get my feet on the ground, and then
feel it. Get the gut.
It was up to some guy that wasn't from the area, didn't know the trade area, didn't know the traffic patterns, but if you got his stamp of approval, then everything was good to go. But yeah, it is amazing now, the advances, with real estate and site selection, and you can go down the wormhole of Buxton scores and all those kind of cool analytics and tools.
Midas has this new software they're just rolling out. It's like a third party they've whatever developed, but probably very, very similar. It could be the same thing, but like so we're looking at new locations, and it's able to every single metric, look at traffic counts, look at, like, it can put pin dots of where customers are from existing stores, and then they can draw a radius and be like, are we going to cannibalize? They can like click on Whole Foods or whatever, some major thing nearby you, and then show these dots on where customers who visited Whole Foods that day, like, where did they sleep at night, to define the trade area, like all this location stuff on your phones, like tracking you, and then they sell it to these software companies that build really like fancy advanced software that we can then use to map it out. And then their goal is to be able to predict or estimate the sales of a specific location based on all these profiles and all this really cool stuff. And it's I don't know, it's the most advanced thing I've ever seen. I'm pretty excited to get it going, because that's, even for us, like, location's key. And we're funny there too, because we can actually, like, lower income areas, like, we actually do better some of the higher income areas, and there's all these different factors that go into even our side of it. So
yeah, and that's we can go down a whole separate wormhole of the benefits of franchising, but that is certainly one of them. Is that there's a lot of that work and technology and expertise that if you're just out there trying to do this stuff on your own, I mean, there's some of this stuff, I mean, I would freaking absolutely hate to do, like some of this IT stuff, and like I try to not be a boomer about it, but but like messing with with new POSs and firewalls and networks and
stuff.
branding and website and online ordering, and the list goes on and on. Like just the technology platforms that franchisors can provide is worth the 6% a lot of times, or whatever the royalty is.
Yep. And so then did you kind of go on this path of just developing one or two locations a year kind of since then? I mean, it's been kind of that's the timeline, right?
Yeah. And, it's definitely not a one size fits all type answer on like ultimate goal of what kind of growth you want to have and what's the end game and what kind of problems do you want to work on, and like we've had really smart people ask us the questions of like why haven't you grown faster, and why don't you have more stores, and that was just that owning the real estate was really important to us, which takes a lot of cash, and that is why we don't own more stores than we do now. But we could also sell that real estate portfolio for 3 to 4 times more than what we could sell the operational portfolio for, and that's with having the number one store in the brand and a bunch of other super duper high performing stores. So
so you own all 14 locations?
We own 11 of 14.
Okay. And so is that kind of the thesis going forward? We're only going to do it if you can own it?
No, I think we've kind of changed our approach on that. Just because the existing real estate portfolio is so good now.
You've got this pretty good nest egg.
But that's like we would prefer to own still.
Yeah, so that's kind of like it's funny in Midas. There's like a couple different ways people do it. Like one of the biggest location, they got 110 locations. They built every single property from the ground up. Like this is the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and they own them all outright now. So huge, hundreds of millions of dollars. There's another friend I have who got like 20 or 30 locations, and he's almost 100% owned. Like he won't do it unless he can buy the real estate. Yep. And just like will pay double than what it's worth if he can get it, because he's paying it down, and like he's so committed to it. And then I'm like somewhere in between. Like we own 7 or 8 of our 30 something stores. Then it's like if we can find an existing store in our market and like there's zero additional like overhead costs to bring it on, right? Because we've already got DMs, we've already got offices, we've already got all the systems. Like, but then if it's like we're gonna go to a brand new store from the ground up, or like to develop it, or to convert an independent, or we got to drive an hour and a half, and like I don't know, it's kind of like there has to be something else at play there. And so that's kind of how we're positioning it now, is like if it's a turnkey existing franchise that's in our footprint, like great if we can buy the real estate, but it's not contingency. But if it's anything else that's like higher risk, we want the reward benefit of owning the dirt too. Yeah,
and I don't think there's a wrong answer. Like I know very successful people in both camps that one just has operations and no real estate, and one won't do a deal without the real estate, and you can be very successful either way. It really just depends.
And it can change and evolve over time.
Yeah.
And, especially for you, after, you said you've got this pretty good infrastructure now, and like maybe like you've hit some of your financial goals, and now it's can you continue just to add on and stack it? Are there other existing Zaxby franchises in your market or footprint?
Yes. Yeah. We have corporate stores, and I think there's 5 or 6 other licensees up here.
And would you buy them out if you had an opportunity to, real estate or not?
For the right price, we would. Yeah. I think that's kind of the mindset change we had a couple of years ago. Was we're like, if the deal makes sense, then it makes sense. The real estate be damned. All else being equal, yes, we still want to own the real estate, but it's not a prerequisite like it previously was.
Yep. Yeah, and so I mean, you got some big volumes too. I mean, what's the top store do? 6-ish million a year?
It'll do about 6 this year. It did 5.9 last year, and we've got 2, maybe 3 that'll get to 5 million this year. So they've done well, but that is a long time of compounding growth. I don't want people to think that we
Yeah,
just
no.
pop this thing open and
The first store you had didn't make money for 4 years.
Right.
And I think that's, and a lot of the headline, right? You have 50 million, you have all these employees and all these locations, and that's like the hype. But like the backstory is like, you almost lost, you lost a shitload of money, and it was like frustrating and sleepless nights and like, what the hell did I get myself into? And like, you go through all these trials and tribulations to get to this point. I think, sometimes on Twitter and all this stuff, you talk about all the good stuff, but like, there's just really like, it's hard work to grow a business, even with a franchise, especially if you want to be the best, like in the country.
That's right.
If you want to be just average, maybe it's easier, but like to be a good executor. So
that's a great point. And that's what does not get posted on Twitter is when it's 2 a.m, you're trying to figure out how the hell you're going to make the mortgage payment and the bank payment and all of these other things going on, and you're getting sued, and there's a workers' comp claim, and 1,000 other things. That's what you don't see on Twitter. And it's kind of a shame in a sense that there's this stigma with failing in entrepreneurship, because it's really not a bad thing. I mean, yes, if you fail in the business, there's a monetary part of it that does suck, but there's a lot of lessons that we can all take away from failures. Like, I know that no one wants to sit here and talk about all the things that they screwed up or the business that didn't work out or whatever, but without failure, there is no outside gains for anyone to capture, and capitalism doesn't work without failure. And we shouldn't stigmatize or make fun of or put people down that haven't had immediate success or have had a bunch of failures, because a lot of the times those people end up coming back and they're the best operator and they're the most successful later in life because of all the lessons they took away from the failure. I wish more people would openly share some of the things that they've screwed up on or businesses that didn't work out.
Yeah, a story that one of the number one Midas franchisee tells, who does $5 million, $6 million, where the average does 1.2, right? And significantly better than average, is that he was average, and then he wasn't making any money. He was discounting, he was price matching, he was doing whatever like the crowd thought you should do, right?
Yep.
And that like like he was trying to figure out how to make payroll. Like at week to week, it was like, what am I going to do to make payroll this week? And it got that bad. And so he decided, he was like, screw it, I'm not doing this anymore. Like what I've been doing isn't working. So then changed it up. He would take a profit sharing plan. I'm not price and match, like our prices are what they are. Tried to reverse engineer a P&L to say, I want to make whatever 15%, and like this is what we're going to sell jobs at, and this is how we're going to do it. And so then he started to build it back up, and then like now he's super successful in it. But like he kind of had this, like he almost went bankrupt, and then you kind of have this epiphany of like, all right, things have to change. I can't keep going the way we're going. And for him, that's it's been tremendous success. So I'm sure you had some along your way too, in those trials.
Oh yeah. So, I mean, the most famous story being, we didn't always have the operating partner model. We had your usual DM, GM, AM, whatever you want to call it. And that first DM we had, was so bad at his job, and it obviously ended up being a blessing in disguise. But he ran 2 of the 3 stores very poorly, and there was lots of other bad things going on, and so he got fired, and that was basically when we said, all right, that was a screw up, we're not doing that anymore. How can we do this better this next go around? And that was when we went to the operating partner model, and haven't looked back since, and was one of the best decisions we ever made.
Yeah, so let's get into that. So can you, like at a high level, like how do you describe the operating partner model?
So they are still technically employees of the company, but we really do try and treat them as true partners. So they get a salary, plus they get 25% of the net operating profits, or NOI, or whatever you want to call it. There's a couple little additional stipulations in there, but that's the short version is that,
And these are what I would consider a store manager. This is the guy who's in the store every day running it, or is this also like this is like a regional person who's overseeing a couple stores, or like I know there's a couple different ways you do it. So what is it? What do the couple variations look like?
So I have both. I have single store operating partners and I have multiple store operating partners. I have 3 multi-store operating partners. The rest are singles. Um, I think not that we modeled it this way after Chick-fil-A, even though it is basically what they do. But I have found in my personal experience that if you have a really good operating partner that proves themselves at one store, I think they're more than capable of taking another store. But really 3 is the max, and it has to be a world-class operating partner to get to 3.
And then the people below, so that 3, he's got 3 stores he oversees. He gets 25% of the profits of all 3 stores. And then what about the compensation for the manager that runs, store A, B, and C? Are they just on another, like they also are not on a profit sharing plan because they're under his umbrella?
So we have both.
Oh boy.
We try our best to give the operating partners as much operational autonomy as humanly possible.
So he wants to give some profit. I mean, whatever they pay that manager is coming out of his, 25% of it's coming out of his like profit cut, right?
Right. Yeah, and
so what happens when guy B or whatever under your 3 guy like knows about this plan, wants to be his own solo operating partner, and then you got to transition him out of the one guy's store into his own? Like, has that happened? I'd imagine the guy who is a 3, he's a really good manager, he probably makes them a lot of money. Like, how do you deal with that? Like, is that a conflict, or are they happy for him? Like, what's that like?
So we have done it previously and are in the process of currently doing it now with one of our new stores. I think it's one of the best things of using the model is because we have, 3 operating partners right now that started with us as cooks and cashiers at 15, 16 years old.
Oh, wow.
And now are operating partners and have their own stores and came up all the way through our organization from back then it would have been $7.25 minimum wage cook cashier, and now they have their own restaurant. Yes, it does short-term impact the operations of the store that they're leaving, but that's also one of the prerequisites that we have is you're not going to be considered to be an operating partner if there's not someone directly behind you in line ready to take your place.
Yep. So you got to train from within. Yep. Do you mind sharing some of the numbers on these?
Yeah, so the salary we pay them is $60,000, which I know that's not a lot, but because the profit share can be really big, especially if you have a top 100 store in the brand, which most of ours are. You can make from just one store, you can make $200,000-$300,000. So that's a pretty dang good living right there.
Okay, so if it's 160 and they're getting another 150 in comp, so you've got like the store's making $600,000, they're getting 25% of that, so 150 plus their salary or whatever it would be, right? Something in that range. Okay. Then how do you? I mean, these are some details too, because we're working on through a similar plan. How do you deal with like CapEx stuff? So you got to do a remodelization. Like, do you just depreciate it over 10 years? Like, and they just get a monthly charge on that? How do you deal with like corporate overhead? Is there like an even charge? I mean, how do you deal with some of those like variable cash flow related things?
Yeah, that is definitely an issue. If you do not really make that part of it clear on the front end, because again, we try and treat them as much as a real partner as anyone else in the organization. And so, when we have to have a big CapEx spend, or, we need a new hood system or a new cooler, whatever the hell it may be, we don't pay out the full NOI every month. We always hold a percentage back specifically for that reason, because while they don't share in any of the initial downside of startup costs or real estate or FF&E or any of that stuff, when we have ongoing expenses like a CapEx or having to pay a franchise fee or a renewal fee or whatever, if that cash in the account, then they need to come up with 25% of that. And so for 20 years we've never had to ask someone to put cash back in because we've been really smart about it, but that's the expectation we have up front. And I hope I never actually have to get someone to do that, because then that's really
how much do you keep in reserves of the NOI?
It depends on the amount of NOI that store is generating.
Probably more a fixed dollar amount, less than a correlated figure to the right.
Yeah, we try and do like a reasonably accurate forecast at the beginning of every year. Like, here's the projects we know we have.
You think you're going to have to spend $200,000 on stuff, so you're going to say, I'm going to take whatever $18K or $15K, whatever it is a month, and move that like into our savings account or whatever it is, to then that is then going to be spent and then expensed when so, I guess, huh?
Yeah. And if we have a big project coming up, even if it's a high volume store putting off a lot of cash, I mean, we'll withhold 50% of the monthly distribution until that project is done and paid for. And then if we come way under budget, there's a bunch of cash left, and that the rest of that cash just gets distributed at the end of the quarter instead of month by month.
Then how do you deal with like P&L education? So these guys, they're from a cashier, they don't have financial P&L, like they don't understand how like all the things impact them. Like, how do you go about training them? How do you talk to me about like monthly reviews, like so they actually really understand like what the hell they're looking at?
That is a big piece of the puzzle, and as you can imagine, they certainly did not go to school for it, and even I had to take accounting 102 3 times before I passed it. But it is critical that you educate them on how a P&L works. What is a P&L first and foremost? What is a balance sheet? What is an income statement? All of these things, and then showing them, these are the things that are in your control month by month. This is how you can move the needle. This is how you get paid. This is what you're paid off of. This is why we hold back this amount. Here's what's in the reserves for this project. But I'm ashamed to say we don't have a formal process for it. But before someone does become an operating partner, I do sit down with them and just have, a extremely detailed conversation of exactly how all this works. And every month when they get their P&L, we sit down every single month, go through it, make sure everything looks good, make sure, we don't see any boo-boos or bad things.
And do you do that personally with each manager, or do you have someone
I try to.
Or someone in your office?
Yeah, we try and, in my defense, we try and educate all the GMs at the same level. So, if they're making the jump from GM to operating partner, they should have a really good grasp of all this before they even become an operating partner.
Yep.
But people have different strengths and weaknesses.
And how long do they have to be a GM with you to be considered to apply or whatever to get approved?
There's no set time. I mean,
do you like them? Do you want to keep them? Right.
Well, yeah, that and show me what you've done. Show me the results you've gotten since you've been the GM. I mean, as you can imagine, I get solicited all the time in the stores of, when's my turn? When am I going to get my store? And, it's a pretty easy answer. I was
show me what you could do. Yeah.
Show me your results. Show me why you should be an operating partner. Was there fear
of open up the Komodo, showing how much money you're making? Like these are, Ben's making all this money and I want to raise and blah, blah, blah. And I don't know, was that concern at all? Or has that come true? Like pushback, or you just weed out the people like who don't understand, the risk and all the risk that you take on to operate a business and the sleepless nights and all this?
I would say it is always an ongoing thing you fight and battle, and even with operating partners that have been with us for a long time, we still have to remind them from time to time of like, look, you got nothing but upside in this. If something goes bad, or if we have to default on the bank loan, or we can't make the payments on the real estate or whatever, that is, brings personal bankruptcy in, and all the downside that comes with that. And until you have been close to that abyss and experienced that, it's not something that you can really make someone truly appreciate until they've been in that situation. And so there is definitely constant reminder and re-education of we take all the downside risk. So in order for us to do so, we have to take,
and if they want to, they can go out and start their own business, right?
They can. Absolutely.
They can go start a Papa John's or something, that whatever they can get into, and take their 200 or 300 grand and start with zero, put that to zero, and then take on a bunch of debt and sign a 20-year agreement, and
that's
try
right.
to do it, right? I'm sure you'd support them too.
I would. I would love if anyone wanted to leave and go do something else. And
are the P&Ls shared like company wide? Like, does everybody know, or is it just like, is there NDAs that it's just like the operating partner and the GM, or is it kind of like, or is it public and like it is what it is?
We try to be as open book as possible, and I do that very purposely, because I believe if you want to be the best, then iron has to sharpen iron. And I have two stores that, even though they're above AUV and Zaxby's, they probably feel like the redheaded stepchild because of all these sales metrics that seem low to them because they're in our group, but in reality, they're actually above average. But they're
doing 2 million, but like you got these guys doing 5 and 6, and the average is whatever less is there. So
but I share everything. I put together an operations dashboard every month. This breaks down everything, and it ranks them 1 to 14, so exactly where you stand on every relevant operational metric in our group. And if our entire group again is above the brand average, say in order accuracy or something like that, but you're last in our group, then I hope that motivates you to be better and keep doing better.
And then do you have like an operations manager or whatever, I don't know, like a COO or district manager, anybody who's over these store managers, or is it just this, like you don't need that role because you've got these operating partners?
I think I'm going to need the role in the next year or two. I don't have, it's me right now.
Okay. Because it's like a right-hand man for you.
Yeah.
Right. Just to help oversee and coach, and because all these guys still need work. Even if you pay them a lot of money, they still need coaching. Right?
Oh, absolutely. And that's a mistake I see a lot of people make too, that want to go down an operating partner route like this, is they just assume, they're financially incentivized, that they don't need any hand-holding or babysitting or supervision, and that is not the case.
And they have their own limiting beliefs of what's possible, right? It's your goal to open up their minds to it. So what was, like, can you give me like before and after? I mean, we know where you're at now. We're at whatever, 50 million in revenue and like 3.5 million a store. Like, how many years ago did you roll this out, and like what level were you at then? Maybe on a per store or whatever, however you looked at it.
It would have been 2009 when we made the pivot, and we were just opening store number 5 at that point. Store
14 years you've been doing this. And so how did you come across it? Did somebody else in Zaxby doing this, or like was it a book? Like, how did you come up with this plan?
Well, we're all from Georgia originally, and obviously with the stores in North Carolina and not living in the market at the time, needed something to incentivize and tie everyone to the same goals that we had. So that was the main thing. And then, I know Chick-fil-A is like quadrupled or whatever in size since then, but they were already doing it. And I mean, really, that was it.
Has it attracted, like, have people come to you because of this and they've heard about it?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And we have people that want to come to us from other Zaxby's licensee groups because they know the opportunities that we can provide them. And I would say actually my person that is probably next up to be our new operating partner, he came from another licensee group.
Okay. And then do you think it helps with the retention too? Like, have you lost operating partners?
Yeah. No, never lost an operating partner. I would imagine we're getting closer to having to buy some out for retirement. And that's a sidebar, but yeah, as far as retention, I mean, there's no doubt.
And then how much more do you pay them, like, versus another Zaxby that pays whatever 5% or whatever the number is of revenue, however you track it? And then how much are you paying as a percentage? Like, I'm sure you're paying them more, but then also the pie gets bigger, right? So your slice maybe got a little smaller, but the total pie got a lot bigger. But any idea in terms of like how much more you're paying these guys?
It's substantial. I mean, especially if you have good stores. I mean, I don't want to speak for anyone else, but I only know 2 or 3 other Zaxby's licensees that pay out as much of the profits that we do.
Yep.
But I think it's the second biggest determining factor to our success is aligning the incentives and the skin in the game, and and all the other benefits of the recruitment and keeping people. I mean, my operating partner for a store that has not yet opened, I mean, just super smart, talented guy that there is no doubt in my mind he would have left 5 or 6 years ago if we did not have this platform in place, because he could have done 100 other things besides working.
Has he been like in the wings and like this is his, like, he's known this is coming, and like, so he's not currently he's like a GM now, and this is like going to be his promotion?
Yes, exactly.
That's awesome. There's have you read The Great Game of Business?
I have not.
Okay, man, you love this. It's like, you should go buy it right now.
Okay.
I have it behind me. It's called The Great Game of Business, and it's like a fictional, or it might be a real story, but it's about, this company that was like almost bankrupt. It was in manufacturing, and like they decided, hey, we're gonna teach everybody about financials. And so then like they created a game of, they had all this debt and like the cash flow and the P&L, and they put every single employee in the company on a profit sharing plan. Line workers, managers, every single person was aligned with profit. And then they went through and educated them on, how to increase the P&L, how do we pay down debt, how all these things tie together. And, and they made it a fun game. And so anyway, it's called The Great Game of Business. So.
Yeah. I had someone ask me not that long ago if I had ever considered taking it all the way down to like the cashier and cook level. And I have thought about it. The problem I run into is if it's not enough, like if it's only like they're getting $50 in profit share a month, like it's just not enough to move the needle for them. It's not enough to really for them to connect the dots that my action gets me this much more money. So that's the problem I keep running into. But if someone smarter than me wants to figure that out for me, I would greatly appreciate it. Because
I mean, it's kind of like, maybe not your pain, but like they know the story of your operating partner who was the cook, right? Mm-hmm. And that if you work hard, you're in a small, like, family-owned company where, you recognize and they will get promoted. And, like the thing I always say is like, as our world gets bigger, the opportunities that get created in our world also, get bigger. And so someone's like in our world and they're doing a good job, like more opportunities will get created. And even if whatever, you're at 14 locations now, you might be at 20, or maybe, hey, you have a really good guy and you put him into the sweat house thing or whatever, right? Like you probably would do that, right? If you had a guy in the wings and maybe you feel like you're at a roadblock here, but like as your world expands, like you need good people within it. So I think as long as people understand that and see that and know the stories, I think that's like a more powerful way to connect it than $50 on the paycheck or whatever, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, let me ask you this. I know you just tweeted about your decision to go down this path. What led you to that, and how did you arrive at the structure that you're at now?
Yeah. So, I mean, for us, it's kind of like, we have 32 locations. We have a bunch of really good managers. And like, we kind of see them as like these pillars. Like, hey, we make a lot of money from those stores. And then we have some stores that we lose money, right? And we don't make money. But like, it's kind of like feeling like, hey, we want to continue to grow, but like, we really want to like lock in these pillars, right? These really profitable stores. And so, we're looking at, all right, well, how do we lock them in? How do we put them on like a more of a long-term plan that's above and beyond their normal comp? And so actually ours is modeled off of Firestone, developed this plan many years ago. And I was told by like senior guys at Firestone who were there that said like, this was the best plan we've ever done in the history of the company. And this is what exploded their growth from a couple hundred to thousands of locations. And so anyway, I have a copy of their plan, and I copied their plan is most of it, to be honest. And so like, basically their plan was like, and this is like, it's not finalized yet, but like, once again, more of a long-term thing. Like, this thing won't really even cost us anything for a couple of years, but then you take a percentage of the store's profit. So let's say it's 10%, and then you pay out like a third that year, a third the second year, and a third the third year. And then the second year you pay, a third from that year and a third from the previous year, right? And then the third year you're paying a third from the current year, and then 2 and then 3. And so it takes them 3 years to kind of get fully vested on this rolling thing. And then when they decide, if they just ever decide to quit, they've kind of, they're walking away from this bucket of money for those future years. And it could be, $30, $40, $50,000. Like, it'd be a pretty good amount of money. So anyway, that was, and then, the in our business too, it's very, similar. We have a lot high fixed costs, but like once they break that fixed cost barrier, a significant amount of incremental sales falls to the bottom line. And so, our thing is, if we can educate these guys to take stores, my best stores do about 2 million in revenue. And if we can get them to 2.5 million, like a significant portion of that 500 grand falls to the bottom line. And so, but a lot of times for them to get there, they got to really break outside of their comfort zone. Like, they're in a comfort zone at whatever level they're at. And like, I don't know, we feel that some of those guys, because they're the best in the company, and because like whatever, like, sometimes they need some extra motivation, and this plan is designed to pay those guys like significantly more money if they can really break through that barrier. And even in Midas, there's, like our best do 2.2. There's guys doing 5 million, right? There's Big O Tires, which is like a similar model and a sister brand, who are doing like 7.5 million, 8 million, like out of 4 walls, right? Maybe they have 8 bays instead of 6, whatever. But like on a per bay basis, it's like, it's the leader, and then it's efficiency, and it's like assembly line, right? Versus our model is like a one person assembles the entire car. Like, so they do it in a different manner, and like we can learn all that stuff. But we need the person at the store who's driving it forward and sees the vision and all that stuff. So that's how ours, and then, there's some other recognition stuff, like just to make them feel part of it, where it's like, their names on the door and like the business cards and special events with like, me and leadership team and, more, then we're investing time in educating them on the P&Ls and what it takes. And so, but if we don't we just send them the form, we send them the like, this is what you earned. That's not like going to do anything versus them really understanding, if we can add 1% of gross profit here, if we can cut our payroll by 1% by doing X, Y, and Z, if we can control these shop expenses, right? Controllable expenses, like at the massive, and you grow sales, like the massive impact that can have. Yep. And so I'm pretty good at like taking that thing and like breaking down so it's simple. And so that'll be, one of the things I'm going to work with them on. And then, tie that to our operations guys, who then focus on, all right, now we know what we need to do. How do we go at bed and actually like do it? So anyway, we're looking forward. I really like I like the total plan too. Like that, so I don't know. I'm going to think about that now too. Because if it's like we're sharing P&Ls with them, because there's this fear of sharing the numbers, right? Like that your best guy is going to come to you and be like, well, you're making this, I want double the amount of money. And, then we get in the situation where it's like, we're not going to double his salary. We're not going to pay him double, but we want to show him how to do it. But I don't know. That's like the fear, right? Is that then people, but then I don't know, maybe people think we're making a lot more money than we are anyhow. And like, who knows? But, I don't know, that book, I'll probably read that book again. Helps you trying to get over that fear. But like you said, like you've shown it, other people in who I know have shown it. I think it's just a matter of how you do it. and belief that, listen, you're going to provide a great opportunity, an opportunity to earn more. And that if people want to go out and do it on their own, they're more than welcome to take on the risk. But most people don't. Most people want a job. They want security. They do. They just they want to do a good job, and that's it. Most people don't want to take the risk that we do, but
yeah,
they only see the tip of the iceberg. That's the problem, right? So
what's in it for me?
Yep. So awesome. Cool. Well, it was great chatting with you here. If I know you're on Twitter, you're pretty active on Twitter. Where is that the best place for people to find you and connect?
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Twitter at TRUMAV.
True Mav.
Yeah.
What it is?
That was an old trading handle / nickname from before I ever even got into the chicken business.
What would have been today if you were in the chicken business?
Oh man, I don't know. It's probably something inappropriate
Little chicken
that I can't share, but
chicken little.
Yeah. I'm on LinkedIn. I only check it about once a month though, but Twitter is definitely the best place.
Yeah, and you share a lot of stuff. You share sales and comps and like insights into food prices and kind of the inner workings. So I think anybody's on Twitter, that definitely check Ben out at TRUMAV.
V.
True Mav.
You got it.
You got it. Awesome. Cool. Thanks again. And yeah, we'll be chatting.
All right. Thanks, Brian.
That's all we got for this episode with the Business with Beers podcast. One thing that would really help both us and other new potential listeners is to rate the show and leave a comment in iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you listen. Also, make sure to link up with me on your preferred social media platforms, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You can find all my links at brianbeers.com. Please just share the podcast with anyone who you think might enjoy it. And until next time, remember to take the actions others won't, to live the life that others don't.